Hello and welcome to this webinar from Education Technology in conjunction with Switchshop. My name is James Higgins and I'm a reporter for Education Technology. Today I'm joined by four tech experts who will be discussing how to effectively secure an IT network, deliver secure remote access and remain compliant with government legislation like Prevent. The guys will also be talking through why advanced threat protection technologies are essential and the importance of keeping pace with the latest developments. So I'll start off by introducing our four panelists. So first off, we've got Michael Curry, who is the director of Switchshop. Hi, Michael.
Hi, James. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. And we've also got Neil Wilkinson, who is the technical services delivery manager for Switchshop.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Neil. I'm also joined by Ian Ridsdale, who is the regional public sector manager for Fortinet.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. And we've also got John McGrath, who is the systems engineer for Fortinet.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, John. I should also just let everyone know that we do have a Q&A function on the webinar today. So if there's at any point during the webinar, there's a topic you'd like us to go into in more detail, or you've got just a general question on the areas that the guys are talking about today, drop a question in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll either be able to feed that in during the conversation if it's a good time, or we can come back to it at the end as we've got 10 minutes to go through Q&A topics and go into a bit more detail. We'll be hearing from the guys from Fortinet later in the webinar, but for now, I'll be handing over to Michael. He's going to give us an introduction to Switchshop and talk about the challenges that they see for the education sector. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thanks, James. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope everyone on the call is keeping safe and well in these difficult times. As James says, my name is Mike Curry, and I'm the sales director here at Switchshop. Obviously, in an ideal world, we'd love to be meeting you all in person, but hopefully this will serve as a good grounding for the topic that we're going to talk about today. And again, as James says, if there's anything you'd like to discuss, either drop some questions in the Q&A at the end, or of course contact anyone you hear from on the webinar today, and we'll happily pick things up with you on a one-to-one basis. So the webinar today is fundamentally to discuss the challenges that we see in the education market when it comes to cybersecurity and how we approach solving those challenges, working with great partners like Fortinet. There's a broad range of people joining us on the call today, including schools, colleges and universities, all of whom have differing challenges, but the general principles of what we're going to discuss are applicable to all. As James said, I'm joined by a few colleagues, Neil Wilkinson, who is Switchshop's technical service delivery manager, Ian and John from Fortinet, from a sales and a technical perspective. As apparent on the agenda, we want to talk you through some of those challenges we see from our customers, and I expect some of those will probably resonate with you, and our approach along with Fortinet in fixing those, and we're going to try and look at how we address those, the key questions that we ask our customers, and how we then try and build a solution to fix those problems. At the end of the webinar, we're going to see a short demo from John, which is going to cover a key factor of all of this in education, which is analysis and reporting of information. So yeah, please do use that Q&A box to ask some questions, and we'll pick some of those out at the end. If we can't answer them at the Q&A, we'll come back to them later. So if you'll indulge me for just a couple of minutes, for those of you who don't know Switchshop, we are a leading value-added reseller in delivering network and security infrastructure solutions. We work heavily in the public sector across education, local government and the NHS, but roughly 70% of our business is working in that education space, be it with schools, academies, colleges, universities. We are first and foremost a technically led company. Our focus is putting the right solutions to the right customers while factoring in practical things like budgets and then the environment as well. We invest heavily in our professional services team, and we try to ensure we're working with the very best manufacturers in the industry. We're obviously here with one of those guys today in Fortinet. We are one of just a handful of expert level partners in the UK, which is a testament not only to our sales position, but rather how technically capable we are and how we work collaboratively with our customers. that accreditation, of course, covers the whole portfolio from their next-gen firewalls and their general security-focused products, but also through to their switching, wireless, and others in their enhanced tech portfolio. Neil, do you want to talk briefly about our professional services offering?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. So we have a team of 14 engineers with a very broad skill set and a very broad set of experiences going back many decades. We have architects from a LAN and wireless perspective, but we have many security specialists on board, including Fortinet NSE certified engineers throughout our service desk and third line support teams. We're also very fortunate to have an NSE 8 architect with us working in terms of high level design on the Fortinet fabric technologies. And I've worked on some really fascinating installations over the last couple of years, including with ambulance services and large university spaces. So I think we're well placed in terms of our design and experience. We work through many different verticals, particularly in education.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Briefly then, just moving on to our relationship with Fortinet. As I alluded to earlier, we're very careful about who we partner with, who we invest our time and effort with, and more importantly, who we ask our customers to invest their time and effort with. So whenever we're taking on a new vendor, we test those products as though they're our own, and we ensure that those product offerings are of the right quality and the right fit for the needs that we see our customers having. Fortinet obviously met that criteria perfectly a number of years ago, and they continue to do so. They demonstrate that with their ever presence in the top right-hand corner of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and demonstrate themselves as industry leaders time and time again with the likes of NSS Labs and similar independent testing organizations. As I said, we can boast to be an expert partner. For those of you who know the Fortinet partner program a little bit already, that used to be known as a platinum partner. They've recently gone through rebranding. So we're now expert, which is the highest level achievable. And that's far more testament to our ability to technically deliver on Fortinet solutions and not just box shift large sales numbers. So our team boasts a variety of Fortinet accreditations through their NSE training program. And most notably, as Neil said, that includes an NSE 8 engineers who have achieved that kind of pinnacle of certification. It's an extremely difficult accreditation to achieve. So that's us. I won't bore you too much with us and our Fortinet relationship. That's us in a nutshell. Let's move on to the challenges that we see in the education environment. As I say, we've got a number of people on the call. So some of these are going to be applicable to everyone. Some of them are going to be applicable to particularly to schools. Some of them are going to be particularly applicable to universities. But hopefully the general message is one that should be consistent for everybody. Neil, do you want to talk us through these a little bit for the first few?
Yeah, absolutely. So the challenges that we've all found in education, we've worked for many years in the education space, particularly in high schools, colleges, and into university space. Where we're dealing in high school space, we are very much led by the Prevent legislation and the KICSI approach, which is the ability to keep your students safe and also prevent that radicalisation that has been so marked these days. And our ability to provide that cybersecurity offering to customers is absolutely critical to the approach we have. So we have a very, very thorough approach to how we can offer those services to users. We have, and particularly with Fortinet, because of the ability to interrogate traffic at such a granular level and to offer the visibility of all the traffic that comes through. It's we try to look at it as what we call a holistic approach that looks at the whole of the network, not just the gateway, not just the LAN, not just the Wi-Fi, but the whole piece as a system to provide the glue across the board. The key, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, about the SSL management for both remote access, which is clearly very important, and also then the integrity of the traffic passing through your firewall. And obviously at that point, we're very aware of budget, and that's Michael's field in terms of sales. But yes, I think we're well placed to talk about the challenges in education.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the issues, we start with Prevent there. I mean, one of the key things that we see is this kind of a lack of consistency, I suppose. There are different products delivering the firewall solution, delivering the filtering client, the mail protection, different vendors in different places doing different things that require different skill sets for people to administer and install and maintain, different contracts to look after and things like that. So as Neil says, we try and formulate that more holistic approach so these things can be integrated, talk to each other, but also are easy to manage from an administration perspective. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with an application that is desperate to run. The next one I think is really key actually, is a lack of next generation firewall features. So we see a lot of schools, colleges, and even universities who are offering, filtering, often the strong filtering solutions and basic firewalling, but not developing what we see now as critical advanced threat protection for their network. So we're talking about gateway antivirus, sandboxing, malware and ransomware protection, and making sure that those are delivered effectively across the network, and that it's not just about stopping kids going to the wrong website. That is obviously a massively important part of the education requirement for cybersecurity, but it needs to be much, much more than that these days. Schools are absolutely vulnerable to attack. Sometimes that's even from within for cheeky kids. But there are financial gains to be made out there by criminals, and so making sure that gateway is properly protected isn't just a nice to have anymore as it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It has to be a key part of the consideration for anyone kind of going to market and looking for a new solution. Excuse me, skips on. We're going to talk about SSL decryption and things a little bit later, so I'll leave that one for the moment. But the last one, of course, is budget. We live in the real world, in that you completely understand that while all this technology, all the services that we can provide are interesting, they're great, they're all lovely things that we'd all like to have, but we have to live in the real world, and that education is often underfunded, doesn't always have the cash to provide for things like this. And we factor that into any solution that we're trying to build, and we understand that we need to work within budgetary restraints, but there are also advantages to working in the way we're going to describe for ongoing cost savings, ongoing training savings, the ability to manage those extra overheads and then keep costs generally low. So our approach, in general, the first thing that we need to try and understand is that schools, colleges and universities are truly enterprise environments when it comes to their network. Universities obviously will see themselves, and rightly so, as that, but we often hear the line, oh, we're just a school, or the college doesn't need advanced security like this. I'm sure everyone on this call can appreciate the scale and complexities of their own environments. But let's be clear that networks with thousands of users on them, as we see in academies, multi-academy trusts, colleges, and of course universities, they are enterprise-grade environments. And whilst budgets might not exactly match those of Barclays or HSBC, those networks, be it at the security level or be it at the LAN or wireless level, they need careful investment and careful design. And that doesn't mean necessarily throwing money around. It means that we need to look at things, as Neil said, in a holistic way, so that everything is fitting together and that there is a purpose to things we're putting in our network, and that we're spending that money wisely. Which is why we genuinely consult and design each solution that we put in with our customers on a case-by-case basis. There is no one size fits all. There is no, oh, you're a school, therefore you buy this box, or you're a college, therefore you buy this box. It's what do you need, what services are you providing, and how can we deliver those. Neil, do you want to talk a little bit about those, the sort of general security fabric, and maybe the next slide is more appropriate, the key components?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it mentioned on the previous slide a little bit about a single operating system or a single vendor to offer the kind of wraparound services. That's not done on a whim, just purely down to our partnership basis. Sometimes there is a real benefit from having a glued, joined up approach to the infrastructure. We work with many vendors, and not just from a security perspective, but from a LAN and wireless perspective altogether. So we do try very hard to operate this as a kind of single system that can provide integration and single sign-on between solutions. Very important to us to provide that extra level of connectivity that gives the user clear, unbridged access without lots of disruption, but offering the visibility to the IT department for the services and the security that they need. So the features that we have, particularly from a firewall perspective, the two key parts of any purchase for any organisation, but particularly in education for us, is the firewall and the core switch. They're absolutely sort of second to none in terms of the budget. The firewall choice today, stateful firewalls are not enough. We need that next generation service, that with those unified threat management options that give you gateway antivirus, intrusion protection, application control, sandboxing, all of those really important levels of protection that you now would expect from your firewall rather than just blocking ports. But the beauty of the Fortinet fabric particularly, and I'm sure Ian will talk about this later on, is the extra elements of the fabric that are contained within that. So there's a mail protection to offer you protection from a spam and malware perspective in your emails. There's a 0-day analysis tool. The sandbox is critical for unknown, unseen before viruses that are on the horizon. And then managing securely your remote users, more relevant than ever today, which I'm sure we're all working remotely. And that end client and SSL VPN protection and scanning is absolutely critical. So yeah, we see that very much as being a key fundamental part of the design principles. There are some key considerations that we have here for us in terms of choosing a product and scaling that product to the customer of choice. So we have key considerations like the number of users and current connections that pass through your firewall, absolutely vital to working out what size appliance to use, because it's a very easy thing to do to under-resource your firewall, and then once you start to put some pressure on it, you find that actually your restricted budget has caused you more grief than actually pushing it to the right model in the first place. So users and concurrent connections are absolutely critical. Obviously bandwidth, whether you want high availability, so obviously extra units and failover and internet circuits and everything else. One of the bigger, more than ever has been a request these days is that east-west traffic analysis. If you're not familiar with that term, that means not just from a LAN to internet protection, but protection from your LAN to your LAN. So sticking a robust gateway in front of your server environment to provide adequate protection from your own users. And that's a very, very bandwidth heavy application and would need careful consideration. Probably one of, if not the most critical factor in choosing an appliance or choosing a sensible fabric to do this job is if you choose to decrypt SSL traffic. Now, there are lots of reasons why you might want to do that. And it is a massive issue in terms of the design of any particular firewall installation. So if you're going to just put up with me for 2 minutes, I'll talk about SSL particularly on its own, because there are lots of reasons for doing it, and there are lots of challenges for doing it in the first place.
Just before we hop onto that, Neil, the reason we put this slide up here and talked about this today is these are the things that we believe as a fundamentals that everyone should be considering as part of any solution they're considering. That this what we use as the basis of how we choose the right solution and how we size the appliances that we put into our customers. But these should be, whenever you go to market, whatever reseller you talk to, whatever manufacturer you talk to, is making sure that these 5 things are understood when you get that solution come through to you. You may have other more specific things you want to cover off as well, of course. Every organization is going to be different. There isn't a one size fits all. But these 5 are tick boxes, if you like, to make sure that they're understood between you and your supplier, and when you're designing, considering these solutions, that you factor this in. Because when, especially in education, we're not talking about being able to replace this box next year or in 2 years or 3 years. We're talking about sweating this probably 5, 6, 7, sometimes even longer, and making sure that you've considered what your requirements are going to be in the next 3 or 4 years, and what your internet bandwidth is going to be, and the number of users you might have, whether east to west traffic is going to become important to you, maybe not now, but is it going to be in 2 years' time, and the same with SSL decryption. So making sure you've covered all these points when you're going to market is absolutely fundamental. Sorry, Neil, interjected there. You would move on to SSL decryption and the challenges that poses us.
Yeah, no problem. No, you're absolutely correct. It's a 1 in 7, 10-year choice, isn't it, in terms of your gateways? It's important to consider those at that point. I guess the question is, why decrypt SSL? That was really where I was going. And I put a single line on that slide there, really just to point out that 70% of all traffic passing through your firewall today is likely to be encrypted. Now, that's a big number, and there are lots of good reasons for that traffic being SSL encrypted. Web traffic, clearly very important. Your banking, clearly. Messaging, obviously. Those things are clearly of massive importance in terms of keeping their integrity from an SSL perspective. But then there's some other grey areas like Google searches. So Google are one of the driving forces of SSL encryption across the internet. And quite rightly, privacy is a very important thing for them. But from an education perspective and from a prevent perspective, Google searches are absolutely critical in terms of monitoring your student base and ensuring that they're kept safe. So how do you manage and monitor those searches if you can't see that traffic passing through? You're really hamstrung without the visibility of those searches. And then beyond searches, viruses and malware. I mean, clearly, virus architects today are fully aware of the SSL technology, and if you can't scan it, that virus has found an easy path into your network. So there are really good reasons for wanting to decrypt SSL traffic. But how? I mean, that's the bottom line. Is it's encrypted for a reason. How will we do it? Well, SSL decryption is very much possible. It is a challenge for every manufacturer on the market, and the technology to do so is clearly it places a large overhead on the device. So that selection of your hardware at that point becomes very important. But in a nutshell, to make sure that all your SSL encrypted content is expected, you need to use something called full SSL inspection, also known as deep inspection. When full SSL inspection is used, the FortiGate impersonates the recipient of the originating SSL session and then decrypts and inspects that content. So even in that statement there, impersonating the recipient, you can hear that actually what you're doing is a man in the middle. You're actually almost behaving as if you're a hacker. So there's good reasons why this is difficult to do, because you're actually breaking that session. Once the FortiGate re-encrypts the content, it uses a certificate stored on the FortiGate to do that. And all FortiGates have a default certificate that's used for full SSL inspection. Now, this is all well and good. However, as the client that's being presented with a different, unknown, untrusted certificate, the browser will, of course, shout and be presented with a very obvious certificate error at that point, which is very disruptive to the user and pretty obvious in terms of that piece. It's a glaring problem for all users that have their traffic decrypted. So how do we deal with that? Well, whilst these warnings obviously serve a purpose, they prevent users from connecting to sites that are unsafe. Many things that trigger these warnings can be some causes of more serious than others. The concern is that all of these warnings, without a great way for the average user to distinguish between the good ones or not, it only creates a really bad user experience and can lead users to starting to ignore all the warnings put together. Now, to prevent your users from seeing certificate warnings, you must install this firewall certificate on your users' devices. The client must trust that certificate to avoid certificate errors. Now, this is fine for managed devices, as it can be pushed out by group policy or such like you're using from a smartphone perspective. But what about transient BYOD type devices where users are bringing their own hardware in, accessing your content, but you still want to protect them and still want to scan their traffic? It's a massive challenge without huge disruption to both the user and to your IT support department. There are solutions, and all I wanted to point out at this point was that Switchshop are at the forefront of innovation on this type of onboarding. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss this type of problem further, as it's a familiar pain point for many of you out there. And what I'm showing you there is an example of a page, an onboarding page that we can present to users to seamlessly download that secure certificate to enable them to get onto the site accurately. Once deep inspection is in place, this really is the enabler to allow the gate and, in fact, the full FortiFabric to function to its full potential. I think, Mike, you want to talk a little bit more about that fabric and what you have in terms of other aspects within the portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is fundamentally where our relationship with Fortinet kind of comes in. Those are the challenges that we see. That SSL decryption one is a big one, and there is no fixed answer to that, but we're trying to innovate on some solutions, as Neil says. But without wanting to step on Ian's toes too much, we were able to use Fortinet's broad portfolio to try and deliver a true security fabric, or a FortiFabric as they call it. If anyone's worked with Fortinet before, they'll know it's 40 something, 40 everything. And they provide a truly integrated approach with visibility across every security appliance, and indeed the LAN and wireless if you've invested in their technology there as well. The sharing of that information between one product and another to ensure that every part of the network is tackling threats coherently and in a unified manner. And using the buzzword at the moment, utilizing AI to identify, prevent, and respond to threats when they occur. And of course, this has other benefits as well, as we were alluding to earlier, where instead of having these multiple systems delivering multiple different services, we can try and wrap that up in one umbrella with one operating system. It may still require multiple devices, but it's one management point, and it's one experience for you and your teams to look after moving forward. So from a training perspective and from a management overhead perspective, it simplifies things greatly, as well as all the security benefits, the extra visibility, the sharing of data, and that true integration that it can offer. So I won't step on their toes too much. I'll hand over to Ian and John and let them talk you through what this looks like in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Mike. Just like to introduce myself and John. We work together looking after public sector in the UK for 4 years now. Prior to that, I was actually assistant head of IT in the council, and also I'm still a qualified teacher of 15 years. So I've got a broad range of knowledge across all the stuff we're talking today, and more importantly, the scars and the t-shirts for being there. I'd like to thank Mike for his explanation of our fabric. I think he can probably do a better job than I can, so I do appreciate that, Mike. One thing I wanted to pick up, though, is that, as you've probably seen in the news and the press, the threat landscape is ever evolving and ever growing across different areas, and no one element is excluded, shall we say, from banking and factories and manufacturing to gaming to education and local authorities and public sector to the cloud and everywhere else. There is a threat. There's an expanding digital attack surface, and basically anywhere that people can get access, then there's a threat. Now, if you look at that from an education perspective, they have an evolving threat landscape, because I remember whiteboards and not much else in classrooms, and protecting the site basically was locking the school gates. Now the site is expanded, and there's mobile learning, there's learning from home, there's working from home recently with all that's going on, and there's also the increasing surge in BYOD, which I'm sure anybody on here has experienced from one end to another, and the challenges that brings along it. Every single one of those devices is an attack surface. So how do we look after that? What do we try and do? So you've seen this diagram on the other slide. We have what we call our security fabric, and the idea is it's a series of devices, front and center being the next generation firewall, but a series of devices that are designed to work together, that are designed to work as a single place of gas management, are designed to share information, because we believe that the way that information can be shared means that the more visibility we get of it all, because they're all designed to work and work together, we can understand and manage that risk a little better. Similarly, as Mike's already alluded to, and Neil, the range of our products means that we have a fully integrated solution rather than the complexity of multi-point projects. We do have a large range of APIs, so I'm not actually saying you need to buy all these products. You can buy one and then grow into the others. We do have a large range of APIs to allow them to work with each other, but obviously the reduction in complexity, increasing workflows, and the visibility does enable us all to try and protect you as best possible in this ever-evolving landscape. I just wanted very briefly, before John goes into a demo, just to mention a couple of key products that Neil's already mentioned that actually are key components in protecting educational establishments. We have the FortiGate, as we've already mentioned, and for people who are on there from a KCIC, keeping children safe in education perspective, and prevent legislation, we do get the CTIRU feeds, which is the counter-terrorism internet referral unit feeds from the Home Office. We do get the Internet Foundation feeds directly as well. They go into our overarching FortiGuard services and propagate every FortiGate. So if you're using it as a full UTM, by that I mean switching antivirus on and spam, web filtering, etc. There's a full-blown next-generation firewall. All those updates and all those requirements as per safeguarding legislation are received by us and are applied on the gate in a number of categories of web filtering that I think totals over 80 now and can be, granularized down. So along with the gate, in education, we also see quite a lot of use of our FortiClient, which is our FortiFabric agent. And what that does is, again, is provide that next-gen protection as an endpoint device unit, but also secure VPNs back into the establishment or the different campus, and also full reporting features. So if any traffic is happening on the FortiGate, or indeed going through the web filtering on the endpoint device or the FortiGate, it is actually logged and recorded. And when that FortiClient does actually come back onto site, it will report back to the piece of equipment that Neil mentioned earlier, which is the analyzer, which allows us to do full monitoring, full reporting and alerting on any activity which is crucial from a safeguarding perspective. He also mentioned FortiMail and sandboxing to try and address the ever-increasing spam and email and zero-day threat. When I was in the council, there was 80% plus of all email coming in was spam, and keeping people safe from clicking on that was a nightmare. If you've multiplied that to students and teachers with 2 or 3 devices on campus, some of them bring your own devices as well, all accessing network in some way, as you can see, the threat vector is huge. So what we like to do is trying to put this whole system in place, our fabric, to ensure that the whole system is protected as well as can be, with the greatest level of visibility and the minimized number of different appliances, hence reducing complexity, reducing cost, and aiding to a better overall solution for the establishment, whichever way it may be. The one thing you haven't mentioned, and I didn't want to steal John's thunder, is the FortiAnalyzer product. As I said, that's a reporting and monitoring engine and an alerting tool. And I think because that's so crucial, especially from a safeguarding perspective in education, what we decided to do is show you a demo of what one actually does and what it looks like and how it behaves. John?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so as Ian mentioned, this is a video demo, which we're going to take you through. This will actually show you the benefits of FortiAnalyzer in terms of its visibility it can provide, in terms of the logs that are actually sent to it by the FortiGate and other platforms as well. So let me start with FortiView. So FortiView is actually the view on the world in terms of what's actually happening, in terms of logs and FortiGate's actually reported into the analyzer platform. Now within FortiView, we can see summaries of items, so things like threats, top threats, And these top threats actually present themselves in obviously a high, medium and low sort of status in terms of critical as well. And we can focus on particular gates as well, and even particular time periods as in relation to those particular threats. As you see, there's a range of time periods, and there's even a custom option as well. So as we drill down in terms of these threats, we can actually then see exactly what the threat was, and in terms of actual integration with things like AD and such, we can actually identify users and not just IP addresses. And as we see here, we've got a PC user, our PC user A, who's actually perpetrated this threat, and it's a malicious website. So you see how easy it is to actually drill down in terms of a threat that's being displayed at top level to a lower level. We also have a threat map. This is an actual graphical impact display, which allows you to see scrolling threats to actually, maybe actually trying to perpetrate your firewall. And we also do a compromised host solution within FortiAnalyzer. This is the threat hunting capability of FortiAnalyzer and is a licensed fee. In terms of sandboxing, we can see what sandbox is actually discovered in terms of threats, which is generally 0-day type elements. And in terms of traffic sources, so top sources of traffic, again, focusing on a particular FortiGate in this case, and a particular time period. And likewise, within the traffic elements, you can also drill down into particular users. And you may notice that we can actually also dynamically add filters in at the top there of the screen to actually go directly to maybe a particular IP or user you're looking for. We can look at things like top destinations. Again, so focus on a particular device. And we can see the destinations here in terms of summaries of particular, maybe IP addresses, but also things like applications as well. And as mentioned earlier, obviously key thing here is SSL inspection in terms of actually getting more visibility in terms of those HTTPS connections that are actually going through the FortiGate. In terms of applications then, in terms of policy hits, we can actually look at policy hits, so what your best used or most used policies are. And likewise, within this screen as well, we can also drill down, if required, into a particular policy to see who's actually using that policy and what devices or even users are actually using that policy. Moving on to applications, so we can actually look at applications that are in use in terms of traffic that's going through the FortiGate. And obviously, again, over a time period. And in terms of the application summary, we can also drill down into who's using a particular application. And obviously, we can drill down further if we need to. So we can separate top cloud applications. So things like, obviously, Facebook being one of them, Gmail, all those other elements in Twitter. And, likewise, we can also drill down in those. Looking at things like top website domains, so domains that have been visited by users, and obviously it's a top-down approach, so the most visited domains in terms of usage, etc., will always be, or most hits, should I say, will be displayed as top. And again, we can actually drill down directly from here to see who's actually been using those particular websites. And you also see a blocked and allowed type summary there as well, along with the user's access. So what I'd like to do now is move across to reporting. Now, reporting is a big thing. Obviously, you need to have visibility and obviously accountability maybe to obviously what's been going on the network. We do provide a number of default reports within FortiAnalyzer, which you can start using from day one. You can even clone these reports and obviously make changes. Things like applications, detailed user website or web browsing report is a useful one, which is a default report. And within this report, we get the opportunity to actually obviously specify a time period. We're going to specify a particular FortiGate that we may be reporting to us. We can also actually, we're using this default report, also specialize on a particular user. So in this case, I'm actually going to use PC user A. And I'm actually going to run a report that's basically looking for PC user A's traffic. We can enable a schedule in this report. We can also enable a notification, so we can actually deliver the report directly via email. We can even express some filters in there if we're only interested in particular types of traffic. that user has actually generated. So I'm going to run that report now. And we actually produce the report in 4 different formats. We produce it in HTML, a PDF, XML, and CSV. And this allows you to obviously do things like publishing to a website, maybe integrate into another report, or even purposely import into another system. If you look at the PDF, you can change the headers and footers on here. By the way, you're not restricted to the Fortinet headers and footers. But if we have a quick look at this report, it's a very simple report, but it obviously can provide some detailed information about a user's browsing history. So we look at, we've got PC user A, we've got his IP address, we've got his device name, we've got the port he came in from, and the FortiGate that's actually reporting it. And down below, we've got some idea of his actual traffic over that time period. So a simple report, but obviously provides you with some visibility. Now, in terms of the other reports, we've actually have a 360-degree report, which can actually provide you some kind of posture assessment of your security. We've also various other reports down the bottom here, which are relative to other products that Fortinet do, and obviously can report into Analyzer, so giving you that holistic platform. Recently, we've introduced this report, the Cyberbullying Indicators report, and also the Self-Harm Indicators report, which obviously helps you with prevent and safeguarding elements. Now, these guys are based on a fixed word list. Now, we can take a look at the actual safe or the self-harming report just to show you an analogy of what actually this looks like. This is a template report which actually shows you what we're actually doing inside this report. So we're looking for particular keywords, and we're summarizing these keywords in terms of applications that were spotted with usage. So we actually see the users, we actually see the words and phrases that they actually use, and obviously times and dates when they actually use those words. And in this case, obviously, this is the self-harming report. And obviously, we can also summarize in terms of the application they were using as well. So down here at Facebook, and also at Twitter, and down in Gmail and Gmail chat. Like I said, this is based on a fixed word report or fixed user word list. We are looking to move to a more dynamic word list in later versions of Analyzer, but that, that will actually come very soon. So in terms of reporting, one of the things I wanted to show you as well is how easy it is to create a report. So in terms of the actual creation of a report, or should I say, when you've actually run a report, there's other things you can actually do in terms of looking at report calendar. So the report calendar actually details when reports were run. You can come here, pick those reports up and download them to your browser. And you can also go to the generated reports as well to see when they were actually run, and also set a time period to see, obviously pick up more archived reports. What I'm going to do now is show you how easy it is to create a report with Analyzer. So we're going to the log view. So this is where all the logs will appear from the actual FortiGates themselves. And we're going to look in the traffic area of the log report, or the log element, and obviously focus on a particular FortiGate and a particular time period. What we're going to do now is we're going to build a chart. So the chart is actually going to encompass the elements that we see here, or some of the elements that we see here. And creation of that chart is very easy. We're going to use the chart builder tool. We're going to include, obviously, a name, which we're going to call it traffic_rep1. And we're going to include the date and time, and obviously the application. We're not going to summarize or group by order or sort. We're going to preview that now. And you may notice on the screen, it's actually built the SQL query language for you in terms of this. I'm going to save that. So that's now produced a chart. And now we're going to go back across to reporting to have a look at that in terms of now we're actually going to create a report and use that chart within the report. So if we go to create new, and obviously we'll just give it a simple name of traffic rep 1. So we create the report, and then we're going to go into the layout and insert the chart what we've just created. But you see how easy this is, and we can obviously insert more charts in here. We don't have to. We're not restricted to inserting one chart in here in this particular report. You can insert multiple charts in here. You can even use charts that are existing within the default templates or default chart library. So there's the chart inserted. We're now actually going to go to settings. We're going to run it over the last 7 days. and we're just going to view the report. We're going to set the device, obviously, as well. And we'll go into view report and actually run the report. Okay, so the report only takes a few seconds to run because we're only running it over a week's period, or weeks of data. So look at the PDF, and as you see, a simple construction of a report from the log view screen, and there's the data that we saw, obviously the data requested, such as date, time, application, etc. So you get the idea how easy it is. And obviously that report can be edited by yourself. We don't restrict you in any way, or shape or form to editing. We even give you access to the SQL language and data sets to be able to do that. So reporting's fine, but what about alerting? What about knowing when something's happening right now? Reports will pull out the information, but we're going to use event handlers to do that. So event handlers can be constructed by you, and we can focus in on particular logs of whatever criteria you decide, in this case web filter, to actually pick out a certain event or a certain condition or a certain incident. In this case, we're looking for a keyword of suicide. We can be actually enhancements, or change the event message. We can decide on a time period of sensitivity, and we can decide on a security or a severity level for the event. We can even apply some custom messages. But down at the bottom here, we can actually look at the delivery elements. So delivery through email. So we inform somebody who's a safeguarding officer. We can send to alerting systems, and we can also send through Fabric connectors, which is a new thing we've added. So if we actually go to events, we're going to hone in on one particular event here, which is actually a keyword alert event. And there's the user that created the keyword event. So we get the username, his IP address, time and date, obviously. We can zone in on this particular event now and scroll down to see the content. So basically what this user has done is he's searched for the word, well, 2 words, Suicide Squad, which is obviously a film. And obviously the user name is detailed as well within this. And this information here is what would actually be sent via email to a safeguarding officer potentially. From that event, we can also do things now like raise an incident. So if we right click on here, we can actually raise an incident. Now what the incident element is to actually give you some kind of a management of this particular alert. And the idea behind it is that you can obviously catalog events or catalog elements of how you dealt with that event or that alert, and what you actually potentially did about that alert. So here we're actually seeing how you apply a various sort of criteria to the incident description, and you can actually allocate this to another user or another user available within the FortiAnalyzer platform. If we then go across now and actually look at that incident we've just created, we can actually, you can see that there's obviously multiple content in this incident, not all of it applicable in terms of what we've just created. But we look, obviously we've got a timeline as in terms of an audit history here. We can look at down here and actually see when the timeline began. We can actually see that the events here, with actual event that created or was created by the incident or part of the incident. We can even include reports or add in reports here if needs be. And obviously we can post comments in here as well, part and parcel of the history of this incident. Now here we've actually added a new feature within FortiAnalyzer, which is basically the ability to execute playbooks, which is a licensed feature. But here you can actually execute a playbook. We'll actually do some actions on your behalf. And construction of those playbooks is quite easy, but obviously can obviously create multiple other elements of events as well, or mediation events potentially. In terms of Fabric, so I mentioned the Fabric connector in there about actually sending to a Fabric connector from the event. So we have some Fabric connectors in here, some obviously for ServiceNow, storage, and even FortiClient EMS, our endpoint protection solution. But the generic one, which is webhook, can be used to possibly send the event to an actual third-party system. So obviously, if you already operate a system of logging incidents, etc., you can use this webhook capability to actually send that event to another system. So it actually gets automatically imported into some kind of incident system already. So that was a brief tour of FortiAnalyzer. Hopefully it shows you what obviously the capabilities are of Analyzer. And obviously I thank you for your time, and yeah, hopefully hearing from you soon.
Thanks, John.
And thanks very much, John. That was really interesting, and I think it's particularly good to have the visuals in front of you to be able to see how it all works. Obviously, as you'll see on the screen in front of you, we have reached the Q&A part of the webinar. So if you do have any questions, technical ones, or if there's anything you want us to expand on, do pitch them to us now. Whilst we just wait for potentially some of those questions, I've got a couple that I wanted to put to the guys. So the first one really, I suppose, is for you, Mike, which is, what do you think are some of the, I mean, you outlined some of those components, but what do you think are perhaps the two most important components that you think people might be interested to know more about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it's a question for everyone in some respects, but first and foremost, obviously, the firewall itself, the FortiGate, as it's known in Fortinet world, is the key part to all of this. This is where obviously that is the first point of external traffic hitting your network. It is the point at which all communication is going to be shared with as part of the fabric. And as the graphic that Ian had up shows, it is the centerpiece of everything that's there. And that should be the point at which everything else is built around. So the sandbox, the mail appliances, client, and the management of those and the integration with those is all going to come through the gate. So in terms of that cybersecurity piece, then very much it's the firewall itself. As Neil said, when we're talking about budgets, and we know budgets are tight, whenever we speak to our customers, the things that they should look to first when they're looking for a sort of a transformational project, when they're looking to put their money somewhere sensible or it's going to give them the best bang for buck, as it were, the core switch and the firewall are the two critical parts of any network. They are the bits that every piece of traffic flows through, whether it's going to internal services. It's going to flow through that core switch, and if you're doing east to west firewalling, it's going to hit the firewall as well. And obviously, if you're going out to the internet, then you need to make sure you've got robust security in place. So those two things are first and foremost. That's not to neglect all the other things. Obviously, if we had, money grows on trees, we'd love to put loads of money in our edge switching, our wireless, our servers, our SAN, and they're all important too. But if you had to ask me where I would spend my money if it was mine, those two bits are most important.
Mm. You said there that a lot of your customers mentioned budgets. What are the kind of the primary challenges that customers say to you? What are the main problems they come to you needing solutions for?
I mean, obviously budgets are tight for everyone. It's we're only coming out. We're probably going back into a period of where austerity is going to be key. Keeping belts tightened and the general lack of funds in the public sector in particular. So having money to spend at all is the first hurdle. It's then being able to communicate I guess internally at schools or colleges, universities, where that money is best spent. And cybersecurity is often a major challenge there, because it's often seen as a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And it's for those outside of the IT department, it's often, we've not had an attack. We don't know that there's going to be an attack. Why do we need to spend money on bolstering our defences? It's only then when that attack occurs, suddenly it's too late, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we regularly speak to schools. I saw one down in Somerset just a few months ago who'd had a ransomware attack. She was in the middle of rebuilding their entire PC estate, and they'd been asked for £750,000 to unlock their files and everything. Now, of course, they didn't pay that money, but they had to go through the extent of several weeks worth of work of rebuilding the whole network, and that's because there hadn't been an investment in the right platforms. And I appreciate that conversation isn't always easy, but again, for us, it's a critical investment in any sort of any education infrastructure, really, to make sure that that's right.
I also think, Mike, at that point as well, that it's very easy to throw money at a problem and buy a product that you think will protect you. you spend all the money on the best core switch and best firewall, in your opinion, chuck it in with no real thought and find yourself no better off. So sometimes actually investing your funds in a design and looking at sensible, logical separation to provide you with the sort of protection and design on a network level that you can use then your investment to its full and get the best benefits out of the hardware at that point is also very critical. So we're very much engineering focused in terms of our designs as well.
Yeah, Neil, I think that's the crucial bit though, isn't it? I remember having the conversation years and years and years ago about making the invisible visible, right? You know, why do we have to worry about increasing our mail protection because we don't get that much spam? No, that's because 80% of it's blocked, but you don't see that. It's this concept, isn't it, that the only time it becomes visible is when, as Mike said, there's been a breach, and then there's the cost of repairing from the breach, potential costs from ICO and other areas around data that may have been lost, X, Y, Z, and then the remediation of new equipment to replace the stuff that clearly didn't in the first place. So, you know, like Mike said, getting whichever firewall it may be, hopefully it's one with 9 red squares on it, but that's a different matter. But getting a really high quality firewall in position and then building out from there with a design of where you want to go proactively rather than reactively is probably the best stage you can be in. And you can grow as your budget grows and add to as your budget is increased or decreased over time.
Does anyone have any tips or suggestions in terms of how someone working in an education sector who perhaps isn't achieving institutional buy-in, how they can pitch this conversation and pitch these issues to those who might not be in the sector and might not be experts in it, but to achieve that institutional buy-in so that they can scale up their activities?
That's one thing I used to actually do when I was in the council, and it was I produced a cyber threat report. And in that, I used to do a number of things using an analyzer, actually, because it was Fortinet as my counsel, is we used to pull off the data for the amount of web traffic that was being used and the applications, the amount of spam from the email, all the things that were invisible, but just showing a high level of demand on the current equipment. And then within that, there'd be any new legislation that was coming through, or any changes KC in Prevent, or in my case, PCI DSS, or things like that. Any changes and what potentially that cost might be. And I'd start to do that 6, 9, 12 months in advance and start to drip feed those concepts in and say, look, okay, this is what today is. These are costs for today. This is what we needed to keep battling today. This is only going to go worse. As you can see, this data is showing we're getting more and more demand over the last few months. Over the next year, we need to start looking at this. Can we start to put stuff in budget to do that? The more we talk about it and the more that invisible becomes visible, there's more chance of actually finding somebody to do some of these things. And of course, adding in the threat of any near misses or any potential breaches and things that you know might happen is far better than just suddenly going one day, oh, actually, I need X amount of thousand for this, that, and the other.
Now, Fortinet actually provide a really good way of doing that as well, because we've
just going to say, Neil, I think this is it's a nice intro into that.
We have a lot of experience at Switchshop in delivering FortiGates into networks transparently on a kind of pre-sales to offer something called a CTAP. It's called a cyber threat assessment, and you can actually monitor for a period of days or weeks or months the traffic that's passing through your network on a monitor-only basis. And at the end of that, run a nice, healthy report that shows you all of the protocols and all of the threats that have been missed by your current solution. It's very SLT executive friendly in terms of the report to show exactly what's been missed, and that does make that invisible visible, as Ian said. I think it's a cracking way of doing it,
and it's cost free. It's not chargeable, is it, guys?
No, absolutely. We can get a box on site, like Neil says, put it in mirror mode, track that data, provide you the report, and take the box out again, all free of charge. Yeah, that's a nice phrase. Make the invisible visible. It's a perfect way of doing it.
I've got one extra question actually for John. When you were talking through alongside that video, you mentioned there that at the moment it's a fixed word list for, I think it was particularly for alerts and for reporting, but you said that was going to be updated with a dynamic word list.
Yes.
How will that be achieved? Who will be inputting those? Will that be drawn from data from kind of existing reports that are being done? Or will that be suggested by users, or will you do that?
So as part of FortiGuard services, that will be done through them, and that information that they will use to populate that list will actually be provided initially by, I think, people like the Internet Watch Foundation, and also through other assessments or threat intelligence, etc., that they can actually obviously analyse and appropriate into a list that would actually, suffice as being something that was useful as part and parcel of that reporting.
John, you can do your own word list as well, though, can't you, and run your own report?
Yeah, absolutely. You can. In fact, in the next version, the word list will be editable, so local edit by the person operating the analyzer. But the intention is to move to the dynamic list.
Yeah, that's important. Actually, being able to add your own words. We live in a sort of fairly diverse country with different slang and different words for all sorts of different things depending on where you are. So if you've got particular words that you in a school and use local to you, and you want to make sure they're covered off in your filtering or your reporting, making sure that you can put those in there is important, and that is absolutely something we can deliver through these products.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point to flag. Anyway, gentlemen, I've noticed the time. So we've used up our hour, but thank you to all of you for your contributions. I found it really, really interesting. Obviously, if you do want to get in contact with Switchshop, obviously the details are on the screen in front of you. So don't hesitate to drop them a line, because they're experts and they'll be able to handle any of your more detailed questions, perhaps that you've drawn from today's webinar. So thanks, Mike, thanks, Neil, thanks, Ian, and thanks, John. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll be able to hear again from you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.